Good afternoon. This is just a little something to get you ready, get you set, so we can go on to our next portion of MIMA. Right now we have greetings from Joseph Palm, who is the Chief of the Office of Minority Health, Department of Health and Senior Services, and he will also introduce our keynote speaker.
Good afternoon. It's always great every year to come to the MIMA conference, and I just want to say thank you first to God. Then I'd like to say thank you to Lincoln University and the staff. The people on staff at Lincoln University, could you stand up? I always like to see the people of knowledge working behind the scenes. Also, before I bring up our leader of our department, would the people with the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, would you please stand? So the theme, people get ready, takes on a lot of meaning, and I can tell you that being in the department for 10 years, this is the first time we've ever had a director with a medical background over the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. And he has served all over the world, all over the United States, and he is mission-driven, vision-driven. He came right in, and for those who may be from Kansas City, St. Louis, Blue Hill, wherever, if you know right now, the big problem we're having are dealing with opioids and homicide. As soon as he landed, he said to me, look, you know, if there's anything we're going to do something about, it's going to be opioids and homicide. So, therefore, we are working on a command center in St. Louis because 2/3 of the overdose deaths in the state of Missouri happen in the St. Louis region. And the highest number of homicides in the state of Missouri happen in the St. Louis region. It's indeed an honor. You know, I mean, as a public health major, it's great to have a leader that understands public health. So I want to bring to you a man that serves on ASTO, that serves all around the country, that teaches all around the world. Director Randall Williams, the Director of the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services.
Thank you, Joe. You're incredibly gracious to let me come today. Joe and I had supper last night, which we often do. We break bread together. And I tell people I'm not originally from Missouri, but I'm now a Missourian, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world because of the friendships that I have here. I would never trade the time here for my friendship with Joe. He's like a brother to me. You know, when I was listening to the hymn, it is so true. We all have been through too much not to worship God. And I think that I read something this weekend that all of us are going through something. If I was to come to your table, there's something going on in your life right now. You're a friend or daughter or son or family or grandchild or somebody that you're going through. And so when you look at why we do what we do in the Department of Health and Senior Services, it's literally we do it to help people, but to protect people's health and keep them safe, no matter what that is. We especially are appreciative to be asked here today because it really represents at least two groups that are very dear to our heart. One of them is senior citizens. 1 out of 4 Missourians will be over 65 in the next 10 years. My mother is 89 and reminded me yesterday that she still works full time. And you think that's good. And I'm thankful, don't get me wrong, she's blessed, we're blessed. But have you ever tried to tell an 89-year-old mother who works full time that you think you're working too hard? Good luck with that. I mean, because her answer always is a little hard work never hurt anybody. Quit your whining. You and your brother, all you do is whine about how hard you work. So every once in a while, I hope your children and grandchildren don't do this to you. I just like to push her buttons. I'll call her up as I'm driving around. I've been to every county in the state, so I spend a lot of time driving. And I'll call and say, Mom, how you doing? She said, I'm doing fine. I said, man, I'm working so hard. I'm driving down to Branson today. Branson? That's only 4 hours away. When I was growing up, we used to, and that starts the whole conversation right there. And then I hang up and I call my brother and say, I got Mom worked up. Give her a call. Tell her how you're working. He says, thanks for telling me. I'll call her right now. The other group that you represent that's incredibly dear to me is Lincoln University. When I go over there and look at the statues in front of the school that represent the founding of the school, it reminds me of how this country should work and how government should work. And I find it incredibly inspirational, the foundation that university was founded on. And so my job is incredibly difficult. I'm not going to fool you. And so from time to time when I need inspiration, I kind of look to Lincoln and its founding of what can be accomplished. When you look at how Lincoln started and where it is today, it truly gives you hope. I want to talk just a little bit about the things that we're dealing with in the department that might affect you. This is a big day. Missouri, August 28th, has switched to a new form of merit reform. And we really, really want to make government incredibly efficient to serve you. And so today's the launch of that. And Joe and I were at a 3-day workshop last week, training leaders in the Missouri way. And that's all about trying to serve you. So we're excited about that. We are now in the middle of a $1 billion reinvention of home and community-based services, which is our program for senior services and people with disabilities to try to deliver services at home rather than in a nursing home or a hospital. We have not changed that since 1982. The world's a little different since 1982. So we are changing that. And at the end, I'm going to give you my phone number. Obviously, whenever you change something, I think most people think it needs to change, but I'd love to hear from you. You can call me and tell me what you think or how we can help you. So that's one thing. The other thing is opioids, which you're going to hear about today. Joe and I were in St. Louis yesterday talking about homicides and opioids for a funeral of someone who unfortunately died last week. And so as Joe said, it's as old as the Bible. Physicians go where physicians are needed. And so if people are dying anywhere in Missouri, whether it's St. Louis or Kansas City, Gainesville or wherever, no matter what the cause. And so incredibly appreciative to Joe to heading up a combined DEA, FBI, St. Louis City, St. Louis City Health Department, Department of Social Services, Department of Behavioral Health, and DHSS initiative. That in St. Louis, we're doing a pilot program where we go out every time there's a murder or an overdose of death, and trying to figure out what we can do immediately to address possible root causes of that from a public health perspective. And we just think we need to operate in dynamic fashion to do that. Other things that we're very concerned about are maternal mortality. Missouri ranks in the bottom 5 of the country for mothers dying. I am an obstetrician by training, practiced for 30 years. So that's something that's very, very important to us. So we're very much focusing on that, and we're very concerned about that. So with that, I'm not going to speak longer. I know you have other things to do. I do want to give you my phone number. This is my cell number. It's the only phone I have. Now don't do me like the woman in St. Louis, who is the nicest person in Missouri. So if you're the nicest person in Missouri, I guess you can do like this. She calls me about her trash. Because I was at a meeting like this, and I said, if I can ever help you, give me a call. So she'll call me and say, Dr. Williams, how you doing? I said, I'm doing fine. She said, you got your seatbelt on? Yes, ma'am, I got my seatbelt on. Did you get a good night's sleep? Yes, ma'am, I got a good night's sleep. Well, you be careful. There's some crazy people out there. Yes, ma'am. I'll be careful. She says, you know, they didn't pick up my trash yesterday. I said, you're kidding. She said, no. I said, we can't have that in Missouri. We can't have trash not being picked up. We're going to do something about that. So I'll call my staff, and they say, this is about that trash. We're hanging up. I said, hey, she heard me say if I could ever help you, call me. She called me. We got to help her. Call somebody in St. Louis and get her trash picked up. But, so you can call me if you're as nice as her. You ask me about whether I'm wearing my seatbelt and whether I got enough sleep last night, if I'm eating well. You can call me for trash. But all of you can call me all the time, even if you want to complain. My cell phone number is, it's the only one I care. Say when Joe gets me, the governor gets me, you can get me. 919-413-7791. I'll repeat that. And it doesn't have to be about a public policy issue. Some people call me, Joe and I, of course Joe's sitting there sweating over there because usually he says what happens is people call me and I hang up and I call Joe and say, you need to handle this. Joe's always, Joe, what you can't read his mind, he's sitting there going, yeah, it's really big of you to call and give me your phone number because all you can do is just call me, which is kind of true to be honest with you. It's 919-413-7791. Now, from time to time, people they'll just call me about something going on with their mom or their daughter or their son. That's okay too. That's all right. Because if I can't help you, we'll find somebody who can help you. Because we just really, really like helping people. It's like I always used to tell people when I walk in as a doctor, if you don't tell me what's wrong with you, it's hard to know how to help you. So we always want to hear that. Now, the only rule I'm going to give you, then I'm going to stop, is that I sleep every night between 9 p.m. and 3:41 a.m. And I don't set my alarm, but I sleep with my dog, and that's when we wake up. 3:41. It's 6 hours, almost 7, so it's not too bad. And that just goes from when I was an obstetrician. I used to have to stay up all night, so I don't need a lot of sleep. However, I do go to bed early. Now, that keeps me from clubbing with Joe as much as he'd like me to. Joe's always calling me, wanting me to go clubbing with you, but I can't go clubbing because I said, Joe, I'll go with you as long as the club closes at 9. I can't stay up any later than that.
I need a vegetarian plate, please.
I'm teasing. But if you call me between 9 p.m. and 3:41 a.m. and you wake me up, because I'll be sound asleep, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. I'm going to ask you how far apart are your contractions. And I'm going to ask you if you've broken your bag of wires. And if you say no to both of those, I'm going back to bed. So anyway, thank you so much. If we can ever help you in any way, I hope you'll call us.
when he says that if he can help you in any way, he means it. And I don't know that everyone knew, but one of the reasons homicide is so important to me is because a year ago, my brother was murdered. And I can tell you that if you talk to my mom and you ask her about Director Randall, she loves him like I love him to death. And when my brother was murdered, Director Randall came over and sat with my mother for hours. She had a lot of questions. When the autopsy came, I didn't know how to read an autopsy because I'm not a doctor. But he sat with me and read the autopsy to make sure I understood everything that was going on. So it's one thing when you hear him saying that, but he means it. And I've never publicly thanked you, but I just want to thank you for the support. He even came to the funeral, and he spent the whole time at the funeral, sat right in front of me. So, you know, when you have somebody that has your back like that, you have their back. So he can call me anytime. Okay? So, so next I want to bring up a young lady that has the greatest heart in the world, and I'll probably get on her nerves because she'll tell me her ideas and that, and I'll say, but she is just phenomenal. She's a physician. She's my fellow Billiken family. She's doing the treatment, opioid treatment, MAT treatment in the community. She is going to churches, explaining to our community about opioids, mental health. And I always have a joke with her because she's always saying another thing she's going to do, and I always say, you don't have time. But anyway, I want to bring to you just a great young lady, Dr. Kanika A. Turner, MD, MBA.
Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me today. Today I wanted to discuss a little bit about the opioid epidemic. The reason this is important to me, one thing I would say that in our community, specifically the African American community, that this isn't anything that's new to our community. A lot of people get the question that, oh, now it's an epidemic, now since it's spread to the majority. And to me, I've come to find a passion to educate and to help people and to change the stigma that has occurred with drug use in the Black community. But today I do want to discuss a little bit about the opioid epidemic in Missouri. Just like the title is, people get ready. So we need to get ready for this change that's going to take place. Next, I'm going to also discuss the physiology behind substance use disorders. Once you understand that it's actually a disease process, it may help you to understand how we as physicians may treat this. Then we'll talk about a little bit what Missouri is doing in regards to prevention, treatment, and recovery, and a little bit about overdose education, Narcan use, and then we'll finish off with a summary. So to start, in 2015 and 2016, we saw a 35% increase in opioid deaths. So in 2015, it was 672 deaths, and in 2016, we had 908. In 2017, the number also increased. It was a 4% increase, but it still went up to 951 opioid-related deaths in the state of Missouri. So if you look at this number, the number of people that are actually overdosing is actually higher than a homicide rate. But that's not the information that we see in the community. This here is a diagram of the state of Missouri. The darkened areas where you see your most dense populations of people dying. So as Chief Joe Palm and Director Randall have also stated, that in St. Louis City and County and the surrounding cities related to St. Louis and even Kansas City, that's where you see your most highest concentration of people dying. And one thing that we're thinking is the explanation is because of fentanyl, and we'll get into a little bit about the different opioids as well. That red dot is where we all are located at right now in relation to St. Louis. And this graph here looks specifically at heroin only. So when it comes to opioids, you have prescription pain medicines like your Percocet, and then you have your heroin and fentanyl. So this graph here also shows the severity of the opioid death rates in relation to St. Louis. So like I said, it's the St. Louis metropolitan area and surrounding cities as well. Now, if you also look at this divided by race and gender, what this map shows here, what this graph shows here, if you look at males, we see that overall, males show a significant increase in overdose deaths. But when you look at black males, it's actually twice as high as white males. And when you look at black males are 8 times more likely to die as compared to black females. But if you look at all across the board, that we have more people that are dying, but look at what the disparity is. It's within the black community. And this is another diagram here, kind of depicting the same thing, that overall we've seen more black women use, more black women die, more black men use, as well as more black men that die. But overall, we've seen a significant increase among all Missourians. And when we stratify this by age, your most common age range is from 25 to 34, 35 to 44, and then 45 to 54. So it's not only affecting young people, but it's also affecting our older population as well. I included this article here. It's a pretty good read if you're interested in reading things like this. But the Chicago Urban League, they actually published a little short article about the African American opioid epidemic. And what this article discusses is that we need to recognize the systemic racism that's occurred with the war on drugs. So back in the 1970s when this came up, you were African American, you were caught with drugs. These were punitive crimes. You were put in jail, in prison, taken away from your families. So what this is saying is that now, since it's become a white problem, now we have politicians, everyone is looking into this problem. But let's get back to the root cause. No matter who you are, whether you're black or white, we as a community need to collectively address the issue. And it starts with educating everyone on what is opioid use disorder. This article also points out that, unfortunately, the state of Missouri, this is a little bit older data, but the state of Missouri was actually number 6 when it comes to having a higher death rate among blacks as compared to whites. Now, there was some recent data someone told me about last week that we've made a little bit of change in the state of Missouri, but unfortunately, for African Americans, that average is still higher than the U.S. average by 10%. And this is the economic cost. We always think about, of course, with money affects everything. So opioid use disorders actually cost in Missouri about $12 billion when we think about everything that goes along with opioid use. So now let's talk about opioids. This is the part I like to educate people about what are opioids. So opioids, this is the overpowerful. This is the incorrect PowerPoint. That's okay. That's okay. All right, I have some extra slides in here. So opioids actually come from opiates. Opiates is a plant derived from poppy seed. And so opioids can be divided into semi-synthetic and synthetic. Your semi-synthetic opioids mean that they're derived from your opioids like morphine. So for example, heroin is derived from morphine. Then you have your synthetic. These are ones that are man-made and they're synthesized to behave like actual opiates. So that's your fentanyl, your tramadol, your oxycodone. These are all medicines that are considered opioids. So think about this next time you go in. If you see a doctor, wherever you go, oxycodone, Percocet, Dilaudid, Narco, heroin, fentanyl, these are all in the line of medications that we consider to be opioids. This is a graph here depicting the potency. And the reason I say that, when we talk about fentanyl as being more potent, that's what you see predominantly distributed in St. Louis City and county areas is your fentanyl. So compared to morphine, fentanyl is about 100 times more potent, and heroin is twice as potent as morphine. And so given that there's a higher potency, of course, that's where we see more people dying because they actually build a tolerance to the medicine or to the drug, and that's where we see more people are dying or overdosing from this. Now let's understand the physiology behind substance use disorder. And I had an additional slide in here with a little bit more words. So how drugs work, what they do is actually it alters the chemical imbalance in your brain. So Drug abuse, when people start using, it actually causes a release of dopamine. Dopamine is actually their hormone. It's a feel-good chemical molecule that's related. So it's the same molecule that's released when it comes to sex, anytime you feel pleasure, that euphoria feeling. So that's what actually causes the addictive component, that it activates this pathway in the brain. And over time, it's actually altered. So that's where people get into the cravings of desire to continue to keep using. So this here is a great little diagram to help you understand when people use opioids. So starting off that white area, this is someone normally functioning. Let's say that their doctor or someone give them Percocet, or if someone used heroin off the street, you initially get this euphoria. You feel this high sensation. Over time, when they develop chronic use, people actually are not using to get that high. They're actually using to prevent tolerance and withdrawal. So I don't know if you've ever seen someone go into withdrawal, but it's a real intense sickness. They have abdominal cramps, nausea, vomiting, goosebumps, they're yawning, fevers, high blood pressure. So people who use opioids actually know this, and the reason they keep using is to actually help minimize their symptoms. So they're no longer getting into that euphoria feeling. They develop a chronic use of physical dependence and build a tolerance on it. And this is actually how our medicines work to help treat this addiction. So what our medicines do, and I will talk about this, it helps to get people back into their normal state. So it helps to restore that chemical imbalance and keep someone functioning normally. So once this pathway is actually disrupted, you're no longer able to control that reward pathway. You're no longer able to distinguish yes or no, or impulsivity, or to control your actions. But once we use these medicines that act on the same pathway, we can get someone back to functioning and maintaining normalcy. So what is opioid use disorder? This is actually the correct term that we as physicians use now. We don't say like someone's an addict or addiction. We actually use opioid use disorder. If they're using other substances, we didn't say substance use disorder. So the correct term is opioid use disorder. Now, according to us, opioid use disorder is a problematic pattern of opioid use leading to clinically significant impairment or distress as manifested by at least two of the following. So some things I typically see is that you're taking opiates over a longer period of time. So some people who may be started on prescription pain medicines, it may start with a 1-month prescription. Over time, you tend to build that tolerance and you want to use more and more. They have a persistent desire of unsuccessful efforts to cut down or control their use. They're also spending unnecessary activities trying to obtain the opioid. So this is where you get into the criminal behavior, where you see people may want to start stealing and start doing other things just to get a hold of the opioid. They also have a strong desire or urge to continue using. In addition, they have a failure to fulfill a major obligation. So people start losing their jobs, they're failing schools, they're dropping out, their marriage, relationships are also becoming distorted as well. They have continued use despite persistent or recurring symptoms. Like I said, it's a chemical imbalance, so they may not recognize that they're causing all of these problems in their surrounding area because they don't understand what's going on. And some of the other things are already addressed as well, impairment in social and physical life as well. So what is tolerance? So tolerance is a need for markedly increased amounts of opioids to achieve intoxication or desired effect. And as I stated, people who use opioids, they're not using with chronic use, they're not using to get high, they're using because they're building a tolerance. They have to continue to keep using. Over time, they go into withdrawal. And people, like I said, who use heroin, they know that if they go into withdrawal, if they use just a little bit more, their symptoms will actually clear up and resolve. So just to summarize, people with opioid use disorder, a strong desire for opioids, inability to control their use or reduce their use. They have continued use despite interference with major obligations, i.e. working, marriage, relationships. And it's been a great amount of time trying to obtain or use opioids as well. So what is the state of Missouri doing? So Missouri received a grant under the State Targeted Response. I'm actually one of the consulting physicians who also work for the state of Missouri. And this is it's actually a $20 million grant to fund efforts regarding prevention, treatment, and recovery and sustainability within our communities all over the state of Missouri. And what Missouri recognizes that we need to transform our entire system when it comes to treating opioid use disorder. So this is not only educating community members, but also educating doctors, so it's a change of practice for us. Also talking to our politicians, changes what we have in place when it comes to policy. So setting up Good Samaritan laws, having Narcan available. These are things that we need to do to transform our entire system and not just focus on one piece. And in what ways we're doing this is prevention, treatment, and recovery as well. And I'll talk a little bit more in detail about what we're doing in those areas. With prevention, in St. Louis City and County, they actually have a prescription drug monitoring system. So what this is, let's say if a patient gets a prescription Percocet from one physician. Before, pharmacies didn't communicate. So patients were able to go to different pharmacies, whether St. Louis County, St. Charles, and they were able to actually get a few different prescriptions for Percocet fill. Well, as a physician, I had no way of knowing that if I wrote this prescription, my patient just went to all these different pharmacies. So now the pharmacies can actually communicate, and it will send me an alert if my patient received another prescription within the last 30 days, and I can actually pull up a long list going back to about 90 days or so with their recent history. We're also doing prescribing guidelines. So we're retraining physicians. Unfortunately, going through residency, I finished my residency a year ago. I didn't learn this at all. In a lot of different residency programs, residents are not being taught. Even for physicians that are currently practicing, it's a change in practice. So the entire paradigm behind opioid use is actually changing. When it comes to treatment, and I'll talk more detail with that, we're expanding access to treatment. You know, how can we discuss we want to help the community, help the people, and we're not expanding access? So this is really huge when it comes to helping people get into the care that they need, but also making sure we have the right physicians who are trained to know how to treat. Harm reduction. So this one is a little iffy for some people. They don't really understand the concept. It's a public health concept. So harm reduction, we're having syringe access, safe consumption sites, Good Samaritan laws, increased access to overdose education. So one of my roles that I'm doing, I'm actually going around, I'm talking to different churches about opioid education in Narcan. There's a lot of evidence that actually show just by doing the educational component and teaching community members about how to use Narcan, that we can actually reduce overdose deaths in the community. I'll talk about Good Samaritan laws toward the end. Recovery. We have different peer support recoveries. Community clinics are also helping out with this effort. And the reason that peer support is so important is that people don't want to do this alone. So what I'm seeing just in my practice, I've been treating as well, the people who actually have that support system in place, those are some of my patients that actually tend to do better, and they actually maintain their recovery a lot longer than someone who do not have that support system. So even if it is a peer support, a family member, not having that stigma, but being there to help them through this process is huge in helping someone maintain their recovery. So this is a summary about what Missouri is doing. Prevention, treatment, recovery, and sustainability throughout the community, all over the state of Missouri. So medication first model in treatment. So this was our prior approach. We probably heard about detox. So detox meant that someone will be sent to a facility. As physicians, we will manage their symptoms. So all of their withdrawal symptoms, we'll give them medications for that. Often medications that we currently use as first line were used as last resort. What we know is that this model doesn't work. People actually have a 70% higher relapse rate after doing a detox model. So we know this doesn't work. People relapse. We cannot just have people detoxing per se. So the medication first model is that once someone enters treatment, our first goal is to get them started on therapy. So medication-assisted therapy, we know that it works. It saves lives. We then can address the psychosocial component. So I always use the example of diabetes when it comes to this. If someone comes to me and they see me for high blood sugars, I don't tell them to come back and see me a week or two later. I start them on insulin. I do the educational component. It's the same concept. We offer medicines right when they're seen. There is a movement now among physicians. We used to do more office-based inductions, but you had to be actually in withdrawal for us to start it. So now as physicians, we're actually doing more and more home inductions. We're educating patients. We're allowing them to do this at the comfort of their home with a support system in place to remove and reduce some of those stigmas and barriers. And once we address the medication component, then we can start to address the other issues, the homelessness, the transportation issues, the legal issues, helping them to find a job. So those are issues we can address once we fix the first problem. And I want everyone to remember that addiction is a disease. So don't think about it as a stigma, it's a disease. The same way I treat hypertension and diabetes, I have to treat it as such. So why does this work? It provides immediate relief from symptoms. It stabilizes my patient a lot faster. It decreases cravings. It helps them to have the mental ability to be able to do normal functioning things like apply for the application, get up on time to go to work. It also allows us to address the psychosocial components. People who actually start on treatment are more likely to stay in treatment. And the biggest thing is that we're saving lives. People are not dying. So a little bit about treatment. So buprenorphine, you may have heard Suboxone or Subutex. Subutex is what we use in a pregnant population. Then there's methadone and Vivitrol. We'll start with methadone first. Actually, this slide was last. So with methadone has been around since the 1970s. It works really well. It helps lower cravings as well as stop withdrawals. One of the things with methadone that some people tend to fall off is that you have to be seen every day at a supervised clinic. So we have methadone clinics in the St. Louis City and county areas. And let's say if their appointment is 9 a.m., the patient must show up every day at the same time to watch the medicine actually being taken. So that's one of the reasons why it works so well, is that you have to be there on time. And it also helps decrease the cravings. I did have an incident that happened with methadone. I had a pregnant woman who she was 6 weeks out, and she went to the methadone clinic. Her appointment was 5 a.m. and she wanted to go in early to breastfeed her baby, and they wouldn't. And mind you, she caught a bus and went to an area. She was African American, and they wouldn't let her come in just to breastfeed her baby. So there's a lot of rules that go into these methadone clinics, and unfortunately, she got upset and she left. They kicked her out of the clinic, and she actually got admitted on my service in a hospital later on that night in full-blown withdrawal. So methadone works, but it's for some people, they definitely need that support system in place. Buprenorphine is the one that you will see a lot of physicians in primary care clinics, treatment centers. This is the one that we're commonly using. And this medicine, the reason why we as physicians really like it is because it's a partial opioid agonist. So what that means is that the buprenorphine component actually acts on those opioid receptors. So it helps to decrease the cravings and withdrawals, but it also includes naloxone. So this part is a blockade effect. So there's a ceiling. So let's say if someone tried to take so much of the Suboxone, they actually can't overdose because it has a maximal ceiling effect on there. They also don't get that high that they think they may get if they're taking heroin or fentanyl. So there's a little bit of protective component when it comes to taking the Suboxone. This one also works really well. We can actually write a prescription. They can go home, start the induction at home. We bring them in the next day. A lot of the pharmacies are also carrying it. And when it comes to access to care, Medicaid does cover this. Even for people who don't have insurance, a lot of clinics are set up with grant programs. My clinic, I work at a FQHC, a Fairly Qualified Health Center, and I can give patients the medication for $15 a month. And if you look at the big picture, I always talk to my patients, they may have had a $100 habit a day of using heroin. And if I'm only saying the medicine is $15, that's pretty affordable if you look at the big picture of how much that they're using. But even so, I have free grant programs. We try our best to get people in and get started on the medications as quick as possible. The only thing with buprenorphine I always counsel about is precipitated withdrawal. So people who use, if they take the Suboxone or Subutex, and if they're not in mild or moderate withdrawal, what it does, it actually displaces the opioid from the receptor, so the heroin, the fentanyl, the Percocet, and they actually go into a really bad withdrawal. So for some people, that withdrawal can be so severe that they actually will shy away from using it. Normally, once I counsel them about using the medicine when they're mild and moderate withdrawal, they do just fine. But this is one thing that we do have to watch out for, which is called precipitated withdrawal. So Vivitrol. So this one had a lot of news coverage last year with Vivitrol. So Vivitrol is called a full opioid antagonist, meaning that it completely blocks those receptors. These are ones that the criminal justice system is using a lot in the prisons and in the jails. The issue with Vivitrol is that you have to have opioids out of your system at least for 7 to 10 days before starting Vivitrol. And so this one is only really useful in certain populations. The other thing that we've noticed with Vivitrol is that let's say if someone have a relapse and they go back, they previously had $100 a day using heroin, they got started on Vivitrol, then they had a relapse. Actually, they have lost that tolerance, and going back and using that same amount actually sets them up for overdose. And so some people are actually not candidates for Vivitrol based off of that fact. So these are some examples, just so you have an understanding of what medication may be best, and that way you'll know as well. So for Vivitrol, so Vivian developed her only addiction following a complicated C-section. So after C-sections, a lot of women are given oxycodone or Percocet to help with the pain. So Vivian would be someone who would be a candidate for Vivitrol injections just because she did not have this long-term use for opioids. Now for Suboxone, Sam is someone who started substances as a teen. So he had a long history, maybe had a traumatic event of injury, broke his arm, he was started on Percocet as a teen, and then transitioned over to heroin. So he will be someone who's coming into treatment, he's interested in starting, he will be the ideal candidate to start Suboxone on. As far as with methadone, So Marty is someone who failed Suboxone treatment. So remember, methadone is these clinics in which it's structured, scheduled time, they have to be there every day to take the medication. So for some people, they need that structure and they have to show up at the same time to get the medication. Now I will say we put 2 treatment programs they failed at. Actually with Suboxone, we actually weigh each individual person as they come across. So some people may have tried Suboxone 4 or 5 times, and normally I get an understanding as to what was the relapse about. Was it because they lost their job, they couldn't afford the medicine? Sometimes there's always some type of trigger that triggered their relapse. So they may have not failed Suboxone, it could have been something that occurred in which why they stopped this medicine. And this is an article that was published that looked at rates of use, continued use of the medication-assisted treatments over 60 days. So as you can see, people who don't use medicine, there's a slight decline, but you see more of a significant decline in illicit drug use on people who are starting on medication-assisted treatments. And of course, methadone will do a little bit better than Suboxone because it has that structure in place. But people do just well when they start these medicines. Now, office-based treatment with Suboxone. Why is this so important? As I stated, it's keeping people alive. The medicine is affordable. They're going home. They're starting these medicines. They're having a lot of follow-up in the clinic. People who get started on treatment are more likely to attend NA meetings and AA meetings. Those are Narcotic Anonymous and Alcoholic Anonymous meetings. They're more likely to be employed, more likely to stop using other substances. So what we see, people are actually not only just using heroin, but in St. Louis City, I'm seeing a lot of people, especially in the Black community, they're mixing heroin with cocaine. So the cocaine epidemic is actually coming back, believe it or not, but right now we're talking so much about heroin that we're not really focusing that much on that. I'm also seeing meth mixed in with the heroin a lot. And so once we get people treated into treatment, they actually will refrain from using those substances. Now, the biggest thing that came up was with marijuana. So there was actually a recent study that was published last week that was shared on our listserv that someone who continued to use marijuana while they're in treatment, it has no differences in their outcome when it comes to opioids. So meaning whether you use marijuana or not, if you're taking the medicine for opioid treatment, your outcome is not going to change. So some physicians get caught up on, well, my patient's still using marijuana. The thing that I always talk about, right now, marijuana is not going to kill you, but if you go home and you use some fentanyl is what's going to kill you tonight, not the marijuana. Sometimes they do, less likely to damage close relationships, less likely to do regretful or impulsive things, less likely to mess up friends and family relationships or take foolish risks. Less likely to have money problems. So people, once they start treatment, like I said, it helps to restore that chemical imbalance so that they can function normally in society. So a little bit with overdose education. Now we kind of discussed what is opioid use disorder, what is the state of Missouri doing. Let's do a little bit on how you can recognize opioid use and overdose risk factors. So someone who has previously overdosed, that in of itself actually set them up for another overdose. If they're not getting into treatment, they are at risk for another overdose just because they had a previous one. If someone had a period of sobriety, meaning they maintain their recovery for some time, and let's say they go to rehab or they go to jail in which they're forced to be off, once they get back into their environment, that tolerance also have built up, and so now they're going back trying to use like they were using before, and they end up overdosing and dying. There's also a change in the strength, the amount, and the supplier of what's being found on the streets. So like I said, fentanyl is really potent, and that's what we're seeing predominantly in St. Louis City and county areas, and that's what's actually explaining a lot of the opioid deaths. The illicit drugs are also more pure. You have people that's buying from all over the place. There's different things that's mixed in it. So people, they don't really know exactly what they're getting. I actually had I had another patient. He was a 60-year-old African-American man, and he was actually in jail for 20 years because he was caught with heroin. And his story was, he was a big-time drug dealer in the 1970s in St. Louis City. So he told me all of his, everything that he ran, and he ended up using his own supply and became addicted to it, and he got caught. And when he got out of prison, he went back to using it. He told me, he said, well, while I was in jail, while I was in prison, I still use anyways. We figured out how to get it in there. And when he got out, he started back buying off the streets. And actually what drove him to treatment was because he didn't know what he was getting. So he was tasting his supply, and he told me pure heroin doesn't have a taste to it. If there is a taste, then we know it was something mixed in there and he didn't use it. And if he tells me, Dr. Turner, this is going to be an expensive habit for me. So that's actually what drove him into treatment, because he didn't know what he was getting off the street. People who have an underlying physical or respiratory disease, so how overdose works when someone overdoses, it actually starts to suppress your respiratory drive. If you already have an underlying respiratory illness, then you just added that complication on top of that as well. Like I said, people are also mixing opioids with other substances as well. People are using alone. So one thing with the harm reduction, I talk to people about, don't use alone, because if you use with someone, stagger your dose. If you overdose, your partner overdose, who can help revive someone if you're using alone? So those are other things that we also talk about as well. Here are some of the signs and symptoms, and this can be for some people who may not be aware. You may think someone, probably could have just fallen out. But if they're unresponsive, you see shallow or no breathing, small pinpoint pupils, cold or clammy skin. They may have a gargling, a snoring type effect, or they may have gray lips and nails. So for some people who are not aware of this, so for example, in my clinic we had someone that also came up and passed out at the front desk. First thing as physicians, we're checking blood sugars. Now we're actually administering Narcan, which is a reversal agent. So Narcan is FDA approved for emergency treatment of known or suspected opioid overdose. I do recommend that for everyone actually to get trained to keep Narcan in your home. There's no harm with administering Narcan. If there's any doubt that someone could have overdosed, I would rather you use the medicine to help revive them than to have some doubt and that person die. So just to touch on a little bit about laws in Missouri. So Narcan is also distributed among EMS. I do tell people to keep some in the home because 50% of overdoses actually occur at home. And for some people, by the time EMS arrive, it may actually be too late. We also have it available at the pharmacy. This was thanks to Dr. Randall. It's available without a prescription as well. So I also send a prescription, but if you know someone, you can actually go to the pharmacy and get a prescription for it as well. And I will discuss the Good Samaritan law in a second. There's a standing order for it, so it is available. Now, the Good Samaritan law, I talked to a lot of people about this because people get scared once someone overdoses. They don't want to call 911. They think they may get arrested. So this law actually protects people. So a person who's in good faith, if they seek or obtain medical assistance for someone who is experiencing a drug or alcohol overdose or other medical emergency, when police arrive, they will not be arrested, charged, or prosecuted for this. So I tell people, call 911. You're not going to get arrested for this. We want people to survive. Lastly, I had actually included another slide about language. This is something that's also in the literature, changing the way we discuss opioids. So some terms, for example, I don't tell people that they are addicted. I don't call people an addict because that's stigmatizing. I don't call them a drug user. So certain terms I say, your opioid use disorder. When it comes to your drug screens, I don't say, your drug screen was dirty, your drug screen was clean. No, you had a positive or a negative drug screen. So one way as we as a community collectively, we can start to address this issue is changing up our dialogue and changing the way that we're also talking about this. So for some people I hear, that's a cocaine user or, those stigmatizing words. People are less likely wanting to seek treatment just for that fear that their family member or friend may not receive them or may not support them. So it's really huge understanding and knowing that we use the correct terminology and language when we address opioid use disorder. So sorry I had a slide about all the words we should and should not use, but it didn't get included. So sorry about that. So briefly just to go over, so we went over some stats. Just to reiterate that St. Louis City, County, and the surrounding metropolitan area is where we see predominantly most of the opioid deaths, and even Kansas City as well. We also define opioid use disorder, so that way we know how to recognize this. We went over a few symptoms. We also discussed what the state of Missouri is doing in regards to prevention, treatment, and recovery. We discussed the medication first model, meaning that as physicians, we no longer detox patients. We're getting people in, we're starting medications first, and then addressing all the other needs. Then we also did spend a little bit about time talking about different medications, also overdose education and Narcan distribution as well. So one of the things also, since I stated this, what can you do as a community? What can we do to help tackle this problem? I hear a lot from some people that, I don't know anyone that's using. Well, actually, as a community member, this is affecting our community, our state. So one thing you can do is educate yourself. know about the medicines, know if your area have physicians that are actually trained to provide treatment. Also, advocate for our legislators, advocate for policy change. And the one thing that I talk to a lot of my churches about, and specifically that we see in the Black community, is that opioid epidemic have been present for a long time. So let's change our discussion. Let's not get upset because, oh, now we see that the model picture is a white suburban kid. No, let's activate all of our resources. Let's use everything that we have and not only use those same treatment programs that work for the majority, let's also get some of our people in those treatment areas as well. That's the only way we'll be able to tackle this problem is if everyone come together as a unit to help address opioid use disorder. And is there any questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
A little bit. I can speak.
This is wonderful. This is a big, huge step, and it's very
Thank you.
creative. My question is, as a community, it takes the whole community, but what about the people, family members are the first support system they have anyway,
Right.
okay? And they abuse that badly. And that's how you know they got the addiction is, is way out of hand. What kind of things are in place to make sure we're gonna be there, like you said, a safe consumption site?
Right.
I think that's basically home, or somebody that you feel safe around as a family member, or somebody's close to.
Well, with the safe consumption sites, there's actually different dedicated buildings for people to actually use. And so with the harm reduction model, it's a public health standpoint. So when you look at drugs, other things that go along with that is infections. So increased rates of STDs. Also increased rates of hepatitis C and HIV. And so if we use safe consumption sites, meaning that there are clean needles present, we have alcohol pods, there's different things that help people be safe in their using, those are the safe consumption sites. But I think your question is about how can we support family members who have people in their family with opioid use disorder, is that correct? So that's where the peer support and recovery come in. There's a few different, depending on what area you're in. So for example, in St. Louis City, where I work at my clinic, so we have support not only for family members, we have counseling, we have behavioral health resources as well. So normally when someone comes to me, I start them on the medications, but unfortunately there's a lot of underlying trauma that's also associated with it. So a lot of depression, anxiety, intimate partner violence, sex workers. So then we can start to address those other issues. And when I start to address the other issues that go along with addiction, then family members will start to notice that, oh, this is the family member I remember from 10 years ago. So the problem is we need to get people into treatment, because remember I stated that it's a chemical imbalance, right? So how the medicines work, it helps to restore someone back to that normal functioning. So once we get them back there, they can function normally, wake up in the morning, go to work, do everything that you do, but that's the problem that family members see. You see the opposite end, the chemical imbalance. Get them into treatment, then we'll get them back restored to how they were beforehand. Does that answer your question?
It's gonna take a process, it's gonna take some time to get to that.
Okay. Well, you can come talk to me afterwards. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Will you be visiting the churches in Southeast
Not yet, but I guess I can do some discussion about that, because right now I'm in St. Louis City and County, and actually what I offer to the churches is a 1-hour training about opioid use. We also do Narcan training, and then I circle back with those churches, but it's to educate the entire church body. And then also I'm hoping to get some of the pastors to understand. I'm actually working with our clergy coalition, so that way churches themselves can be a support center and a support place for a lot of people as well. So that's kind of what I offer, but I can see if we can start to do outreach outside of St. Louis City and County. Like handouts and things. Yeah, definitely. I have some. Not with me today, but I can get you some. But we have some handouts and things of that sort that people can take home and read and understand opioid use. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my best friend's son had some issues. And everywhere she called, they wanted insurance, and they don't have any insurance. So what would you suggest that we do? As my best friend said, he has the issues, and she don't have any insurance. So where do we start to get him some help?
Right. So a lot of the unfortunately, a lot of the private physicians are the ones that, require insurance. But if you have a clinic like a federally qualified health center or a community health center, a lot of those are funded through federal money. They go off a sliding scale. That will actually be the start because patients can be seen without insurance in those clinics, and it's actually based off a sliding scale. So, for example, at my clinic, if you're 100% sliding scale, meaning you don't have any copay when you come and see me. So that will be a start. I will also say there are a few treatment centers. I'll have to get the information. I have to try to get your contact information, but there are a few treatment centers distributed throughout the state of Missouri in which someone can come in who don't have insurance as well. And there's grant money, that $20 million grant money that the state of Missouri received actually goes to fund some of those treatment centers, and it's to help patients exactly like that who don't have insurance.
You said you were in the city,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Kenny.
You said you say you're in the city.
St. Louis City.
St. Louis City.
This is in the city, the JPL area.
Okay, so actually, Athenia Healthcare, they offer it. I'm at Family Care Health Center. They also offer it as well. And then there's ARCA, Assisted Recovery Centers of America. They also offer treatment without having insurance. And then those are the main ones in St. Louis City and County that you can start to look into.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Oh, yes, ma'am. No, you don't. So that's already at the pharmacies. You actually don't need a prescription to get it. There's a standing order at pharmacies that if you need Narcan, they can actually dispense it. Good question. Let's see. Let me get back to you on the shelf life. I think so.
Can you define the Samaritan law again, please?
Yes, ma'am. So the Good Samaritan law, let's go back here. So what this law states is that, so let's say you have two people that are using drugs. One person overdosed, they used the Narcan. We always recommend you call 911. So what this law does, it protects the people who are at the scene, that if police show up, no one will be arrested, charged, or prosecuted. Correct, no one will be charged. So that's why it's important to know this law, the Good Samaritan law, and police officers know about this. So call 911. I tell everyone, call 911, because if a police officer does something that violates this law, they are in violation. But this is the law that actually protects you against any criminal punishment behind it.
Yes. Methadone. I know they have a lot of methadone clinics in St. Louis and Kansas City. Back in the 70s, I understand that methadone can become addicted also. So you're using methadone to cure one addiction when a person can catch another addiction from using methadone.
So I've heard that a lot. So some people think that we're substituting one medicine for another, and we're actually not doing that. So yes, methadone, if they use it in high doses, they can experience that, but it's still not like using heroin or fentanyl. So methadone is a safer option. We actually use methadone to treat chronic pain if someone is a candidate for that as well. But what we're doing is that we're using medicines to help restore the chemical balance and prevent or help reduce overdose. So someone who's using heroin compared to someone who's using methadone, who's more likely to overdose? The person that's using heroin. So, and I agree with the methadone, there's a slightly more abuse potential behind methadone, because we do see it. Some people, they're buying off the streets. But if you talk to someone who actually will buy the methadone or the Suboxone off the streets, they're actually not buying it to get high, they're buying it to help treat their symptoms, because they probably can't get a hold of the heroin, so they'll turn to the next best thing, and they'll use the Suboxone or the methadone to help treat themselves. I've also had people who actually started themselves on Suboxone on the street, but unfortunately $20 a pill, and so, they'll start themselves and they come see me, they get insurance, and then it's covered. But a lot of people in the community, they don't use to get high, they use to help treat themselves, actually. I think you have a question.
How do you determine what church it is?
I actually just opened it up to all churches. So I don't have any criteria, just any church that's willing to have me come in to do the training and education, that's where I go. So me and there's a few team members, but I kind of lead all of it. So that's where I go. And the reason why I wanted to do the outreach to the churches is because, in our community, the church is our backbone. And so, if we can look at this from not only a spiritual perspective when it comes to drug use, we can also use the medical part as well. And so the churches, back in the day, everyone went to the church for everything. If you needed food, if you needed whatever it was, we went to the church. So how come we can't restore what the church was in the community and address this issue? Thank you. So that's why I'm doing outreach to churches, but it's not limited. You can, and I can actually, I have my, where should I give my contact information to? Because I have an email address that churches specifically contact me at. It's separate from my personal one. I think it's Faith, Faith, COMM, project@gmail.com. But I'll also make sure I get it to Ms. Butler as well. And feel free to contact me with questions also. I love to be a resource. Thank you.